My name is Austin Parker, and even now my hands tremble as I type these words. Only 28 years old, I had spent nearly half my adult life building a career at Meridian Tech in downtown Charleston, South Carolina. Then, in a single, fateful morning meeting, my entire back-end development team was dissolved. One moment, I was planning the next sprint. The next, I was packing up my desk and carrying home a cardboard box of personal items. I expected a temporary reprieve when I drove the hour inland to Somerville, the town where I grew up. The familiar red brick sidewalks, the canopy of live oaks over Main Street, my mother's rose bushes in full bloom, all of it should have felt like homecoming. My parents, Marjorie and Bryce Parker, stood on the porch, arms outstretched. "Stay as long as you need," Mom said, her eyes bright with concern. Dad ruffled my hair and joked that he'd finally have someone to split the yard work with. I believed them. Instead, within hours, an undercurrent of tension snaked through the rooms I once thought safe. In the shadowy hallway, I caught snippets of urgent whispers between my parents and my sister, Adriana, who at 26 had just been promoted to senior content strategist at a wellness startup. When I asked how her big presentation went, her smile felt forced. "Great," she said. "Just great. Nothing more." But her gaze flicked to the study door the moment I turned away, and the door clicked shut too quickly. That first night, Mum prepared my favorite shrimp étouffée, rich, creamy, and spiced just right, while Dad tinkered with my childhood bicycle in the garage. I offered to help clean the pots, but Mum waved me off. "Really, Austin? I've got it." I watched her shoulders stiffen as she scurried out of the kitchen. Dad tried to distract me with stories about his golf league. His laughter rang hollow, and every time I leaned in, he held up his tablet as if hiding something on the screen. In my old bedroom, everything was exactly how I left it. My faded navy comforter, trophies from Little League still gleaming on the shelf, posters of space shuttles lining the walls. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling of being an intruder. Lying in the creaky twin bed, I stared at the ceiling fan, spinning slowly, too slowly, and listened to the house settle in the darkness. The night air, heavy with jasmine and honeysuckle, felt like a weight pressing me into the mattress. As sleep evaded me, I realized this wasn't simply a family homecoming. It was the calm before a storm I'd never seen coming. Something in this old house, once a refuge, had shifted, and tomorrow I would discover exactly how widespread the betrayal had become. Over the next 48 hours, my growing unease crystallized into painful clarity. Adriana's visits became increasingly frequent and oddly timed. She would drop by just when I was out sending resumes or meeting recruiters, then vanish with a curt nod as soon as I returned. On Friday afternoon, I caught her seated at the polished oak dining table alongside Mom and Dad, with papers strewn before them. Their faces froze, eyes darting toward me, and their hands hastily covered a set of official-looking envelopes stamped "Confidential." My pulse thundered. What were they hiding? That very evening, my phone buzzed with a terse text from Adriana. "Formal family dinner tomorrow at 7, dress business." A wave of dread washed over me. The following day, throughout the afternoon, Mum fussed over the table setting and polished the crystal glasses Grandma Lillian had bequeathed them 30 years ago. Every detail felt rehearsed, like actors preparing for a play whose script I'd never read. At exactly 7 o'clock, Adriana appeared in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, her hair pulled into a severe chignon. She escorted me to an unfamiliar seat directly across from her, my back turned to the window overlooking the garden where Grandma had once taught me to plant azaleas. Dinner conversation was strained. Dad feigned enthusiasm about the weather. Mom offered awkward praise for Adriana's career milestones, and Adriana herself peppered her remarks with barely concealed barbs. As we finished creme brulee, she reached into her leather portfolio and slid an envelope toward me. "Surprise," she said with sweet malice. Grandma changed her mind about who deserves this house. My breath caught. Legally, the house now belonged to Adriana, and I had exactly 72 hours to vacate. The shock hit me like a physical blow. I stared at the envelope Adriana had just slid across the table, as if it might burn my fingers. My once familiar dining room, honed by decades of family celebrations, felt like a stage set for my humiliation. Dad averted his gaze, pretending the tablecloth's embroidered pattern had suddenly captivated him. Mum dabbed at her eyes, tears glistening yet offering no defense. Adriana leaned forward, her expression placid and predatory. "It's all perfectly legal," her fiancé, Harrison Stewart, announced, his clipped tone more fitting for a corporate boardroom than a family gathering. "The transfer has been processed. The will is binding. You have exactly 72 hours to vacate the property." My world tilted. Betrayed by the people who had told me I could stay as long as necessary, I struggled to speak. My voice caught in my throat. "Why?" I finally managed, my words barely above a whisper. Why would Grandma do this? She loved this house. Adriana shrugged, uncaring. "She recognized who was more deserving in the end," she said, casually inspecting her manicured nails. "Me? Someone who's built a successful career, engaged to a partner with strong financial backing, versus you, the unemployed child come crawling back." My chest tightened. "Unemployed?"
"I lost my job because of corporate restructuring, not personal failure. I was thriving, on track for a promotion." Mum cleared her throat, offering a feeble apology. "Life isn't fair," she murmured, her voice trembling. Adriana cut her off sharply.
"The fact remains, I own this house now, and I'm giving you 72 hours to gather your things and leave." A dull ache settled behind my eyes. I looked again at Dad. The man who had taught me honesty and integrity was now a stoic bystander.
"Dad," I croaked, desperate, "you're okay with this, forcing your own son out of the house when I have nowhere else to go?" He shifted uncomfortably, eyes fixed on a china plate adorned with Grandma's crest. "It's complicated," he said, quietly.
"The will is binding. Legal considerations—" "Legal considerations?" I echoed incredulously. "Dad, I'm your son. This is family, not a contract negotiation." Adriana sighed as if bored. "You're 28, not 18. Plenty of people your age live independently. 3 days is generous." Harrison chimed in, his tone final. "Monday at 9 we expect the keys on the kitchen counter and the property cleared of your belongings." I felt dizzy, as though the chandelier overhead had lost its balance and was tilting
"Toward me."
My heart hammered in my chest, every breath a struggle. Somerville's quiet streets, the moss-draped oaks, they had always been my refuge. Now they felt like the walls narrowing around me. Without another word, I pushed back my chair. It screeched against the hardwood floor, an abrupt declaration of my outrage. "I can't believe this,"
I gasped.
That my own family could do this to me. Then I fled, 2 steps at a time, climbing the staircase to my childhood bedroom, that once safe haven, now a confine of betrayal. Locking the door behind me, I sank against it and let the tears flow, the reality of my shattered world crashing in on me. I woke in my childhood bedroom just after dawn, the late autumn light slanting through the blinds and painting stripes on the floor. My head throbbed, and every muscle ached from yesterday's confrontation. I pressed a hand to my chest. My heart still pounded at a frantic pace. The house was silent, except for the distant hum of my parents' morning routine. I knew I had fewer than 48 hours before Adriana's deadline expired. I forced myself out of bed and dressed in the same clothes I'd worn the night before, a crisp white shirt and dark jeans. I paused to look in the mirror, barely recognizing the haggard face staring back. Red-rimmed eyes, pale skin, unkempt hair. My reflection mirrored the turmoil inside me. But beneath the exhaustion, I felt a flicker of resolve. I wouldn't leave without a fight. In the kitchen, Mum was standing by the counter, mechanically stirring pancake batter. She startled when she saw me. "Austin," she whispered, I cut her off gently but firmly. "How could you let this happen?" Her hand trembled over the mixing bowl. "We didn't have a choice," she said, voice barely audible. I set the tableware aside and leaned in. "There's always a choice, Mum. You chose Adriana over me." Before she could respond, Dad entered in his golf clothes, curling into a paper towel as he grabbed a mug of coffee. His expression was carefully blank. "Morning," he mumbled, avoiding eye contact. I swallowed my frustration and addressed him. "Dad, are you really okay with throwing me out? You said I could stay as long as needed." He sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "It's the will, son. Legally binding." I shook my head, anger and disbelief coursing through me. Family isn't about legal documents. Mum's tears fell silently as she backed away. I realized they had already retreated emotionally. I felt a swell of sorrow before it hardened into determination. I gathered my courage. "I need help," I said.
"I can't do this alone." Dad's shoulders sagged, but he didn't object. Mom dabbed at her cheeks with her sleeve. I grabbed my phone and dialed Nancy's number. Her sleepy voice answered on the 3rd ring. "Austin?"
"What's wrong?" I swallowed hard and let the events of the last 24 hours spill out in a rush. As I spoke, Nancy rallied. "Pack an overnight bag. I'll drive down from Stamford right now. You're crashing on my couch and we'll figure out the next steps." Relief washed over me in a wave so powerful it brought tears back to my eyes. "Thank you," I choked out. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Nancy's laughter was warm and steady. "You're not alone. We'll get through this." After I hung up, I turned to my parents, who watched with guilt etched on their faces. "I'm leaving this house tomorrow," I said calmly.
"But before I go, I'm gathering proof. Emails, documents, witness statements. This isn't over." With that, I retreated to my room, heart thumping with renewed purpose. The storm hadn't passed, it was only beginning, and I was ready to face it head on.
By mid-morning on Saturday, I'd packed a duffel bag with my essentials and slipped out the side door, locking my childhood bedroom behind me. Nancy greeted me at the curb in her silver Toyota, 3 grocery bags on the passenger seat, bread, eggs, wine, and enough snacks to fuel a small army, she announced cheerfully. Her confidence bolstered my resolve as we pulled away from the Parker residence. We drove straight to the low-country legal aid clinic in downtown Charleston, an unassuming brick building above a second-hand bookstore. Nancy looped her arm through mine as we climbed the narrow staircase. "You don't have to do this alone," she said. Inside, a receptionist handed me a clipboard without a word, as if they'd been expecting my arrival. An hour later, I sat across from attorney Monica Rodriguez, whose Midwestern politeness belied a steely determination. Her office was lined with books on elder law and estate disputes, a tall window letting in pale winter light. After I laid out the evidence, hushed phone calls, Adriana's ominous text, the will's abrupt revision, and the envelopes marked confidential, Monica's expression grew grave. "This is classic undue influence," she said. "Altering a will while a testator is vulnerable, especially if they were medicated or confused, opens the door for a legal challenge." She flipped through my notes. "You've got 2 days before the deadline expires. We'll file a formal contest of the will. Once filed, a court injunction will stay any property transfers and give us time to investigate." My stomach clenched. "I can't afford a retainer," I admitted, voice barely steady. Monica offered a reassuring smile. "We work on contingency for cases like this. If your evidence is strong, and it appears to be, we'll find a private firm to take it. You won't owe anything up front." Relief washed over me, mingled with lingering betrayal. "Thank you," I said, almost whispering. Before leaving, Monica gave me a list of tasks. Locate Grandma Lillian's original will with her longtime attorney, gather any witnesses who heard Grandma express her true intentions, and secure any emails or letters referencing the estate changes. She emphasized documenting every interaction with Adriana, Dad, and anyone involved in the new will's execution. Back in Nancy's car, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. We stopped at Dad's favorite coffee shop so I could think through the plan. Over lattes, Nancy helped me draft emails to Grandma's original lawyer, Lawrence Whitaker, and reached out to 2 neighbors who remembered Grandma's weekly bridge club conversations. "No detail is too small," she insisted. That afternoon, we visited Lawrence Whitaker's office, a modest law practice in a century-old Charleston brownstone. His silver hair and measured tone reminded me of my grandfather. When I explained the situation, his eyes clouded with concern. "She never indicated any desire to change her will," he confirmed. "She trusted me for decades. I was surprised when another attorney contacted me to say the estate had been transferred elsewhere. He promised to search his archives for any handwritten drafts Grandma Lillian might have left, and to testify on my behalf if needed." As I walked back to Nancy's car, clutching copies of Grandmother's old wills, I realized I wasn't just fighting for a house. I was fighting for the integrity of my family's history and the memory of the woman who had always believed in me. When Nancy dropped me off at my temporary room, her spare bedroom, I felt a cautious optimism. I had allies, a plan, and the truth on my side. The storm was far from over, but for the first time since that dinner, I knew I could weather it. Late Sunday morning, I returned to the Parker house under the guise of retrieving a forgotten laptop charger, armed instead with a clear purpose: to uncover anything hidden in Grandma Lillian's personal effects. My heart pounded as I climbed the back stairs to her old study, now a dust-laden room filled with my parents' filing cabinets. The door was unlocked too easy. I slipped inside and immediately spotted the faded leather satchel Grandma always carried to bridge club. Inside, amid knitting needles and loose knitting patterns, I found a stack of yellowed stationery in her tidy cursive, letters addressed to me over the years, and beneath them a single envelope marked in red ink, for Austin, no matter what. My
pulse raced.
I tore open the seal and read her familiar script. She'd anticipated potential family strife and outlined her unwavering intention to leave the house to me. More than that, she'd provided instructions on locating a secondary safety account at Somerville Savings, accessible only with my name and a special code she'd tucked into that very letter. Tears blurred my vision at her foresight and love, knowing she'd prepared for my protection even before her final days. Clutching the letter to my chest, I whispered into the empty room, "I won't let you down, Grandma." I tucked the envelope into my jacket pocket and hurried downstairs, determined to bring this evidence to Monica's attention before the day's end. That afternoon, Nancy and I convened at the local cafe where the Bridgewood Garden Club met. I had arranged to meet Ms. Penelope Rhodes, an 83-year-old member who'd been Grandma's closest confidant. Penelope arrived in a floral hat and wool cardigan, her blue eyes bright with recollection. Over steaming mugs of tea, she recalled Grandma Lillian's frequent declarations. "Austin belongs in this house," she'd said during weekly meetings in the sunlit back garden. Penelope even produced a faded program from the club's spring luncheon 2 years ago, on which Grandma had handwritten next to my name, "Her true heir." Her testimony, combined with the newly discovered letter, would form an unassailable narrative of Grandma's genuine intentions. As I left the cafe carrying Penelope's signed affidavit in a sealed envelope, I felt both vindicated and empowered. Each step forward dispelled the paralyzing dread of betrayal and replaced it with a resolute clarity. I would not simply survive this ordeal, I would honor Grandma's legacy by restoring justice, safeguarding her home, and forging a future defined by integrity rather than deception. Monday dawned grey and misty, as if the low country sky itself mourned my predicament. I woke before sunrise, nerves jangling. Today was D-Day. The formal contest of Grandma Lillian's will had to be delivered before Adriana's 72-hour deadline expired. I showered, dressed in a navy blazer and charcoal slacks, business attire, just as Adriana had specified. In the living room, I found Dad halfway through his morning paper and Mom sipping coffee at the kitchen island. They regarded me with strained expressions. "I'm heading out," I announced, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I have a delivery to make." Mum's lip quivered. "Austin, please, I have to do this," I interrupted gently. "I'll be back soon." Outside, Nancy waited in her car, a folder marked "Legal Family Estate" in her lap. We drove to the county clerk's office, where I handed Monica Rodriguez's assistant 2 copies of the formal contest letter. The clerk stamped them, filed, and received, adding official time stamps. My stomach clenched with relief and apprehension. "Now we wait for the injunction," Nancy said, glancing at her watch. "It should arrive by midday." We returned to the Parker house just as the sun broke through the cloud cover. I carried the stamped envelopes and a folder of affidavits, Grandma's letter, Penelope Rhodes's testimony, Lawrence Whitaker's original will draft notes. Dad opened the door and hesitated. "They called this morning," he said quietly. "Court issued a temporary stay." No property transfers can occur until the dispute is settled. A wave of triumph washed over me. Tiny but significant victory. I inhaled deeply. "Good," I said, "but I need to see Adriana and Harrison." Inside, I gathered the family in the living room. Adriana looked petrified. Harrison's jaw was clenched. Mum hovered by the doorway, and Dad stood stiffly nearby. "I've delivered the contest," I announced. "The court has stayed any transfers. This house remains in escrow until a judge reviews the evidence." Adriana's eyes flickered with panic. "Austin, please." I held up Grandma's letter. "This," I said softly, voice thick with emotion, "is Grandma's unambiguous wish. She wrote it for me, knowing her will might be challenged. It proves undue influence and her intentions." Harrison swallowed hard. Mum covered her mouth, tears shining. Dad's eyes filled with regret. Silence swallowed the room. Finally, Dad spoke. We didn't realize—" I cut in calmly. "It's not enough to say sorry. I need you to stand with me, not against me. Grandma trusted me with this home."
I ask only that you respect her true wishes." Adriana's shoulders sagged. She glanced at Harrison, then at Grandma's letter in my hand. I understand," she whispered. In that heavy silence, I felt the first breath of genuine relief.
The battle was far from over, but for the first time I knew I wasn't fighting alone, and that Grandma's voice would guide every step. The air in the Parker household felt different after the injunction, less oppressive, but still charged with unspoken tension. I spent Tuesday morning organizing my evidence, scanning Grandma's letter, Penelope's affidavit, and the email threads between Dad, Adriana, and Bradford Thornton. I needed everything digital and backed up. Nancy volunteered as my IT wingwoman, setting up a secure cloud folder and encrypting the files. "If they try to delete or shred anything," she warned, "we'll have it safe." Her calm competence steadied me. By midday, I had a preliminary meeting with the private law firm that agreed to take my case on contingency. The senior partner, Eleanor Cho, reviewed the documents carefully. "You've assembled a rock-solid prima facie case for undue influence," she said. "Our strategy will be to file a motion to void the most recent will on grounds of incapacity and coercion, then move to reinstate the prior version." She outlined the timeline: depositions of witnesses, medical expert testimony to confirm Grandma's impaired capacity under pain medication, and document authentication. I felt a surge of cautious optimism. The law had a chance to right this wrong. But the emotional healing was just beginning. That evening, I returned to the house to retrieve a few personal items, my childhood guitar and the scrapbooks I'd started in high school. I buzzed the front door and was surprised when Mom answered alone, her eyes red-rimmed. "Can we talk?" she asked, voice trembling. Inside, she led me to the sunroom, Grandma's favorite spot, with its bay windows overlooking the azalea beds. A single pink blossom trembled in the early winter breeze. Mum sank onto the wicker loveseat and gestured for me to sit beside her. "I've been a coward," she began, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I was so afraid of conflict, of losing my home, that I let Adriana's panic override my better judgment.
"I betrayed you, and I'm so sorry." I felt both sorrow and relief at her apology. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "But sorry isn't enough. I need actions. She nodded emphatically. I want to help you.
Whatever you need, transporting boxes, finding witnesses, testifying in court, I'll stand by you. Her sincerity moved me. We embraced, and for the first time since the dinner, I felt a glimpse of genuine maternal warmth. Dad arrived home shortly after, and too offered his support, albeit awkwardly. He admitted he'd been blindsided by Bradford Thornton's slick assurances and regretted not listening to Grandma's long-time attorney. Later that night, I unpacked my guitar and played the lullaby Grandma used to hum to me. The familiar melody felt like a benediction, sealing a new chapter of solidarity rather than betrayal. As the final notes faded, I resolved, no matter the legal outcome, I would rebuild our family bonds on honesty and respect, just as Grandma Lillian would have wanted. The morning after my conversation with Mom and Dad dawned crisp and clear, the winter sun glinting off frost-tipped azaleas in Grandma's beloved sunroom garden. I felt a cautious optimism as I donned my charcoal suit and packed a small tote with the latest batch of evidence and a fresh notebook. Today was the day of my first deposition. I would testify before Adriana's attorney and her legal team under oath about everything I had uncovered. My stomach fluttered with nerves, but beneath them lay a steely resolve. This was one more step toward restoring justice and honoring Grandma Lillian's true wishes. Nancy drove me to the downtown office of Harrison's attorneys, a slick glass tower that seemed to reflect my lingering anxiety back at me. We checked in at the reception desk, and I was led down a sterile hallway to a neutral conference room. A court reporter sat in one corner, poised with stenotype machine. On the opposite side sat Adriana's counsel, a sharp-suited woman named Meredith Blake, flanked by a junior associate. A videographer set up a camera to record the session. When I entered, Adriana hovered at the back of the room, her arms folded and eyes downcast. I settled into the chair facing the attorneys and the reporter. Meredith Blake began with formalities, swearing me in, reminding me of my obligation to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, and then launched into her first question. Mr. Parker, can you explain your relationship with your grandmother, Lillian Gray, prior to her death? I took a steadying breath and began recounting childhood memories of afternoons spent in her garden, her gentle guidance as she taught me patience and perseverance and her unwavering belief in my potential. I described the day she passed her original will to her longtime attorney, Lawrence Whitaker, and the shock of discovering a new lawyer, Bradford Thornton, handling her estate in her final weeks. I detailed the whispered phone calls I overheard, the sudden disappearance of important mail, and the day Adriana delivered the revised will over our formal dinner. Meredith interjected with calm skepticism. Is it possible that your grief and resentment colored your perception of those events? I nodded respectfully, but refuted her suggestion with concrete evidence, timestamps on emails, certified mail, receipts, Penelope Rhodes's signed affidavit, and Grandma's letter, dated just weeks before her death, explicitly stating her intentions to leave the house to me. As I laid each document on the table, the attorney's raised eyebrows betrayed her surprise. For 2 hours, I answered questions about financial records revealing Adriana and Harrison's liquidity crisis, the affidavits from Garden Club members who heard Grandma's declarations, and the medical notes indicating Grandma's confusion under high-dose pain medication when Bradford Thornton visited. Every answer felt like forging another link in the chain of truth I had built. When the deposition concluded, Meredith Blake conceded, Your testimony is compelling, Mr. Parker.
We will need to reassess our strategy. I gathered my materials, my heart pounding with both relief and anticipation. Outside the building, Nancy enveloped me in a congratulatory hug. "You were incredible," she said.
One deposition down, this will strengthen your case immensely. As we drove away, I looked back at the glass tower, imagining the walls finally reflecting the truth instead of obscuring it. Each step, each word under oath brought me closer to reclaiming Grandma's legacy and the home she so lovingly entrusted to me. The path ahead remained challenging, but my conviction burned brighter than ever. I would see this through to the end. The weekend slipped away in a blur of legal preparations and quiet moments of reflection. Monday arrived with a crisp chill in the air, but inside my mind I felt a warming sense of momentum. My deposition had shaken Adriana's legal team, and Deborah Cho's firm assured me the judge would likely grant our motion to reinstate Grandma Lillian's original will. Yet there remained one critical hurdle: obtaining expert medical testimony to confirm Grandma's diminished capacity at the time she signed the new document. That afternoon, Nancy and I met with Dr. Evelyn Mercer, a geriatric psychiatrist recommended by Monica Rodriguez. Her office, lined with anatomical models and medical journals, felt sterile yet reassuring. Dr. Mercer reviewed Grandma's medical records, the chart notes indicating high-dose analgesics, observations of confusion, and documented episodes of disorientation. She examined the timeline. Bradford Thornton's visits occurred precisely when the painkiller regimen peaked. After 2 hours of detailed questions, Dr. Mercer leaned back and said, "The records strongly suggest Ms. Gray lacked testamentary capacity at those points. I'm prepared to testify that her cognitive impairment would have rendered her unable to make informed decisions regarding her estate." Relief washed over me. I slid a signed retainer agreement across the desk. "Thank you, Doctor. Your testimony will be invaluable." Back in the car, Nancy grinned. "That seals it. Between your deposition and the doctor's affidavit, it's only a matter of time." Tuesday morning in court, Judge Randall Matthews listened as Deborah Cho presented our motion. She laid out the deposition transcript, Dr. Mercer's affidavit, Lawrence Whitaker's testimony about Grandma's original will, and Penelope Rhodes's witness statement. Adriana's counsel objected, but the mounting evidence was overwhelming. After a brief recess, Judge Matthews returned and announced his ruling. He would void the contested will and reinstate the prior version, ordering that the property transfer procedures be halted permanently. The courtroom, often a place of hushed tension and rigid formality, felt charged with vindication. Tears stung my eyes as I heard the words, "It is ordered that the decedent's will, dated June 15th, 2024, shall be the operative instrument for the distribution of the estate." Outside the courthouse steps, I hugged Nancy.
Tight.
Passers-by offered congratulations, unaware of the storm we'd weathered to get here. I took a deep breath of the cool March air. The weight of betrayal and legal battle began to lift, replaced by the promise of restoring my grandmother's legacy. That evening, I returned to the Parker house to retrieve the original estate documents. Dad met me at the door, holding a sealed envelope. "It's yours," he said quietly, pressing it into my hand. Inside lay the original will and a handwritten note from Grandma Lillian. I knew you would fight for what was right. Welcome home, always. I stepped into the house I'd feared was lost, feeling more at home than ever before. The walls held echoes of pain, but now they resonated with truth, justice, and the enduring love of my grandmother. Wednesday morning marked the beginning of a new chapter, transforming the house into a haven for women emerging from family crises. Nancy, Elena Cho and I met in Grandma Lillian's eastern wing, the area she'd earmarked for transitional housing. The room was dusty, with chipped plaster walls and warped floorboards, but sunlight still filtered through the tall sash windows, casting hopeful patterns on the bare wood. I introduced the restoration team, Michael, a specialist in historic interiors, and his assistant, Karen. As I described Grandma's vision of 3 private suites with a shared kitchenette and living area, Michael nodded thoughtfully. "We'll preserve the original mouldings and window frames," he promised, while discreetly installing modern plumbing and electrical outlets. Karen sketched notes fiercely, mapping out materials and timelines. For the first time, the space felt more alive than abandoned. After lunch, I headed to the offices of the Eleanor Winters Foundation, where I met with Mr. Walter Jenkins, the bank manager Grandma had trusted. He handed me the special access card for the reserve account she'd set aside, along with a detailed breakdown of how the funds should be allocated. Half would cover the renovation, the rest would seed a grant program offering scholarships and emergency aid to the women who would call this place home. Holding the card in my hand, I could almost feel Grandma's proud smile from beyond. That evening, I invited my parents and Adriana for a preview of the renovated wing. Adriana arrived late, her expression guarded. But when she stepped inside and saw the freshly painted walls and sample floor plans, her shoulders relaxed. Mum, inspecting the elegant room layout, whispered, "This is exactly what she always wanted." In that moment, I sensed their understanding deepen. Trust remains fragile, but today we'd taken a vital step toward healing.
As I locked the door behind us, I walked the length of the corridor, listening to the echo of footsteps on the new subfloor. In that soft creak, I heard a promise of renewal, an echo of lives reborn.
The house that once witnessed our greatest betrayal was now becoming a place of compassion, solidarity, and hope, just as Grandma Lillian intended. Thursday morning arrived with a gentle drizzle, pattering against the windows of Grandma Lillian's renovated eastern wing. I woke earlier than usual, my mind buzzing with the tasks ahead, preparing welcome kits for our first residents, and finalizing partnerships with local support services. After 6 months of legal battles, renovations, and countless late-night strategy sessions, the Eleanor Winters Foundation was finally ready to open its doors. By 9 o'clock, Nancy and I stood in the newly furnished common area, a bright room with soft sofas, shelves stocked with books donated by the garden club, and steaming carafes of coffee. 3 plush chairs faced a low table set with fresh fruit and hand-stitched welcome cards. Each card bore Grandma's signature rose emblem alongside a handwritten note, "Welcome home. You are safe here." Our first resident, Ms. Priya Desai, arrived precisely at 10:30. A former nurse in her late 30s, Priya had fled an abusive household and spent weeks searching for emergency shelter. As she stepped inside, her wide eyes took in the warm colors and gentle lighting. I greeted her at the door. "Priya, welcome. I'm Austin, and this will be your home for as long as you need." She managed a tentative smile, clutching a single carry-on bag. "Thank you," she whispered, voice trembling. I handed her the welcome card and a small basket containing a plush bathrobe, a journal, and a framed photograph of Grandma in her rose garden. "Grandma Lillian believed in building sanctuary," I explained softly. "This space is yours to heal and rebuild." Next, we showed Priya to her private suite, a cozy room with a deep windowsill perfect for morning coffee, a soft quilted bedspread, and a small desk where she could write or search for job listings. The ensuite bathroom featured modern fixtures and an emergency call button discreetly installed. As Priya ran her fingers over the smooth wood of the dresser, tears sparkled in her eyes. "I've never felt so welcomed," she said. Over the next hour, I introduced her to our network of partner organizations, a local women's legal clinic, a job training non-profit, and a counseling center offering sliding scale fees. Nancy explained the schedule of group workshops we'd hold each Wednesday, mindfulness exercises, resume-building seminars, and peer support circles. Priya nodded, absorbing every detail. By noon, 2 more residents arrived. Mrs. Eleanor Ruiz, a single mother escaping financial exploitation, and Ms. Marisol Hayes, a veteran facing displacement after a health crisis. Together they formed the Foundation's inaugural cohort of 3 women. I watched as they exchanged hesitant smiles and shared small talk about the weather, the houseplants, and Priya's journal. In that moment, the house hummed with a quiet energy of solidarity and hope. As I stepped back into the hallway, I pressed my hand to the rose-colored wall and whispered, "We did it, Grandma." Her legacy, once threatened by betrayal, now lived on in the laughter of new beginnings, in the warmth of safe refuge, and in the unwavering promise that this house would always stand for compassion, dignity, and second chances. Friday dawned bright and clear, the first real break in the spring showers. I woke before sunrise, the house unusually quiet now that our 3 inaugural residents were settled. In the kitchen I brewed coffee for everyone, fresh ground beans from the local roastery, and laid out pastries from Mrs. Donohue's bakery down the street. The scent of coffee and warm croissants drifted through the halls as I prepared for today's community meeting. At 10 o'clock, Priya, Eleanor, and Marisol gathered in the common area, each holding a steaming mug. Their expressions were a blend of curiosity and cautious optimism. I stood before them, heart swelling with pride. "Good morning," I began. "Today marks 1 week since you moved in. How are you feeling?" Priya spoke first, her voice steady.
"I've started journaling every morning," she said, lifting the leather-bound book we provided. "Writing down my thoughts helps me process everything. I applied for 2 nursing positions yesterday." Eleanor nodded.
"I met with the legal clinic, and they're helping me file for rightful custody of my daughter." Marisol added, "I connected with the Veterans Employment Program. I have an interview next week." Their successes, though small steps, felt monumental. I smiled and introduced today's workshop facilitator, Ms. Nadia Ellis, a licensed counselor specializing in trauma recovery. Nadia guided the group through a breathing exercise to ground their thoughts, then led them in a reflective discussion about resilience, how each challenge they'd faced had forged their strength. As they shared stories of perseverance, I watched tears of relief and smiles of solidarity blossom. The room, once a silent shell, now radiated warmth and human connection. After the session, I walked the women to the garden, where the azaleas and camellias were bursting into bloom. We paused by Grandma Lillian's rose bushes, her final gift to the house. I reminded everyone of Grandma's words. Home is not just a place, it is the courage to start anew. Priya gently touched a delicate pink bloom. It's beautiful, she whispered, just like the hope this place gave me. That afternoon, I met with the Foundation's board, 3 community leaders, and 2 longtime friends of Grandma Lillian. We reviewed budgets, discussed fundraising events, and planned the annual spring soiree to raise awareness. Each board member shared their admiration, how far we'd come in months, the lives already transformed, and the promise of countless more. As evening fell, I returned to the sunroom with a journal in hand. I penned a letter to Grandma Lillian, recounting the week's milestones, new job applications, legal victories, blossoming friendships, and the garden's vibrant rebirth. I closed the journal and pressed my cheek against the cool window pane, gazing at the silhouette of the house, a testament to resilience, justice, and the enduring power of love. In that moment, I felt her presence most strongly, guiding each step forward into a future defined not by betrayal, but by compassion and hope. Saturday morning brought a sense of calm accomplishment that contrasted sharply with the chaos of 6 months ago. I woke to sunlight streaming through the bay windows of the sunroom, where the women were already gathered over a light breakfast, fresh fruit, yogurt, and the oatmeal muffins I'd baked last night. As I joined them, their laughter drifted in the air, a sound I once thought I'd never hear in this house again. After breakfast, I checked in with Marisol, who beamed as she told me she'd been offered a part-time position at the Veteran Support Center where she had interviewed. Elena showed off a tentative court date for her custody case, and Priya announced she'd been invited to shadow at the local clinic before applying for a permanent role. Their progress, each milestone, felt like a star lighting the darkest nights. By mid-morning, I prepared for a scheduled visit from the local news station, an opportunity to share the story of the Eleanor Winters Foundation's mission. I met the reporter, Jen Myers, in the renovated dining-turned-home office, following the exact spot where Adriana once delivered her ultimatum. The contrast was striking. Behind me, walls adorned with photographs of the Foundation's first residents and framed quotes from Grandma Lillian. Jen's camera light glowed warmly as I recounted the journey, from betrayal and legal battle to restoration and outreach. We believe every person deserves a place to heal, I told the camera, voice steady. This house, this legacy, was meant to shelter those in need. We're honored to carry Grandma's vision forward. Jen asked about future plans, expanding to a second property, adding career training labs, and hosting community building events. I shared my hopes, emphasizing that the Foundation's growth depended on community support and that donations would directly impact these women's lives. After the interview, Nancy and I walked through the garden. The azaleas were in full bloom, and the rose bushes unfurled their first petals of the season. "You've turned pain into purpose," Nancy said, her voice filled with admiration. I nodded, gazing at the colorful blossoms. "Grandma taught me resilience." I never could have imagined this journey when I first walked back through that front door. But now, every moment here feels like reclaiming more than just a house. It's reclaiming hope. When I returned inside, the first warm breeze of spring drifted through the open windows, carrying with it the scent of new beginnings. In that breath, I felt the culmination of every struggle, every tear, and every victory. The house had become exactly what Grandma Lillian intended, a true home, not only of brick and mortar, but of compassion, renewal, and unwavering belief in the strength of the human spirit. Sunday evening found the house bathed in golden light as sunset filtered through the oak trees lining the long driveway. I sat in Grandma Lillian's favorite armchair in the sunroom, a steaming cup of mint tea in hand, reflecting on how far we'd come. The Eleanor Winters Foundation had grown from a bold idea born of family betrayal into a living tribute to compassion and resilience. Earlier that day, the three residents, Priya, Eleanor, and Marisol, hosted a small open house for friends and partners. The former dining room, now a bright home office, buzzed with conversations as local volunteers, legal aids, and donors toured the renovated suites. Guests admired the preserved wainscoting and restored hardwood floors while listening to stories of transformation, Priya's first paycheck, Elena's regained confidence, and Marisol's renewed sense of purpose. Their voices blended into a chorus of hope. After the event, I walked the marble-topped hall where family victories and betrayals once clashed. I placed my hand on the freshly painted wall, imagining the echoes of every step. The rose emblem Grandma had designed adorned the foundation's logo at the end of the corridor, a constant reminder of her enduring presence. I whispered softly, "We did it, Grandma." That night, as the house settled into its quiet rest, I climbed the stairs to my old bedroom. Everything had changed, yet in a way, nothing had. The trophies and posters were gone, replaced by framed photos of new beginnings. Our first board meeting, a snapshot of the inaugural residents with their certificates of completion, and a garden club portrait of Grandma smiling at me. I unpacked a small box containing her leather knitting bag and the worn copy of her favorite poetry collection. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I thumbed through her handwritten margins, the same gentle guidance she had given me 30 years ago. Lying down, I felt a peace I never thought possible. That first night, I locked myself away. Betrayal had felt like a dagger. Justice had felt like a battle. But compassion had felt like home. I closed my eyes, breathing in the faint scent of roses drifting through the cracked open window. In the hush of that moment, I understood. Grandma had always known I had the strength to turn pain into purpose, and by carrying her legacy forward, I had become the person she always believed I could be. As the stars emerged in the southern sky, I whispered a final good night to the house that was no longer a battlefield, but a sanctuary, proof that even the deepest wounds can bloom into something beautiful.